Owen, Baby Boy Unknown is a new book by Mauston resident Ann Marie Vinopal. I'm going to read the first paragraph of the book for you because it's going to draw you in. 1912 is the year we begin our story, and the place is the city of St. Paul, Minnesota. The season is winter, and freezing cold is all around. Snow is falling all the time. For the poor, it is a miserable place to live. How much worse could it be? Perhaps it would be for an impoverished girl, giving birth and having no way to care for a small baby boy. For 7 months, someone cared for baby Owen, and then finally someone reached a decision. The baby boy was in failing health and needed medical help, and so it was decided to put the little boy in the hands of the Lord by way of St. Patrick's Catholic Church on Mississippi Street in St. Paul, Minnesota. The baby boy was abandoned there without a note. That's how the book opens. Many of you will know Owen Phillips. He was a lifelong Mauston resident, well, at least for all of his adult life, and he lived to be into his 90s. And if you don't know Owen, you will for sure know his daughters, who I have the pleasure of speaking with today. Okay, so joining me this afternoon from left to right is Mrs. Brockman, Janet Brockman, Ann Marie Vinopal, and Norma Phillips. All three women, and their youngest sister, who is in the book, Virginia, all active in the Mauston community. You'll know most of them, if not now from this story, from their other workings in the community. So thank you, ladies, for agreeing to come in during COVID. Let's start by saying you all had inklings that you knew that Owen was adopted. You had inklings that there was more of a story, but you didn't know all that's in the book until after he had passed away. Why don't you start, Anne Marie, and fill us in. Tell us how you came to write the book.
Dad's origins were always near Iowa, near Osage, and he would take us over there. And Norma lived in Nebraska, and so we would travel through, and we would stop at some of the places and do some research on where Dad had grown up in Iowa. And then, as it went, we come to the checking for where he was adopted from, and it was found to be Owatonna. And we pursued it. We tried to get the records, and then finally Norma succeeded, and we were sent 100 pages at least of letters that his grandma and grandpa had written to get Owen from the orphanage. And then after he was taken as their foster child, then every year the orphanage would visit and fill out these forms, and we got copies of him. He's 5 years old, he's 6 years old, he has a great family, and there's copies in the letter of some of the really interesting remarks that were made by the orphanage. And so that just lit the fire.
Yep, in Mauston. So Norma, when you wrote to the orphanage or called or emailed, what year was that when you said, "Oh, do you have any records for our dad?"
We had tried a number of times to get information from courthouses in Iowa and Minnesota, and probably lasting over 5-6 years. And then the orphanage had a newspaper that they sent us, and we subscribed. And in there it said for $50, they would do the research for one of your relatives or a resident of the Owatonna orphanage. And so I thought, well, why not? And sent the $50, and within a couple months, here comes all this information, which I just assumed were probably documents about the orphanage, and so the four of us got together, and we started probably about 7 o'clock that evening and read through all that information and cried and laughed and that's how.
So you get the packet. Okay, how many years after he's passed away do you get the packet?
He was 100, wasn't he? Or was he?
Because he had, once someone is over 100 years old, then you can get the records easier. Mm-hmm. But I think it's about 5 years after Dad passed that we got that information. That would have been about 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. So he's passed away 5 years ago. You get the packet, and then it's full of, if you haven't read the book or if you haven't had the chance to check it out, it's full of, the dialogue between the judge and the nurse and all kinds of letters between the orphanage and the foster families, and really, really rich information. Yes. And so you say to yourself, I have to write all this down. Uh-huh.
And I had thought, for just the grandchildren, all the grandchildren, because he lived to be in his 90s. There were so many of the grandchildren that he was just an important figure. And all these memories and all, I wanted them all to have the true story of where Owen, how he made his life and influenced and affected so many people.
Okay, so how do you come to publish? You start typing, or did you write it?
No, I had a computer.
Yeah.
The younger generation, they know how to merge and how to do all these great things, number page. Took me a long time.
Okay.
But the publishing was really easy.
Okay. Who did the publishing? You
Concept printing. He just made it so easy. Good. I learned how to use a flash drive. Took it up, this little thing, and voila.
Yes. And there's lots of photos in here too. So these would have been your own photos or photos that your mother had? Yes. Photos of him throughout the 30s and 40s and 50s. The second half of the book is really as much about your lives than growing up as it is his. And if you don't know, all four of the sisters have a section in the book where they talk about growing up and their memories, and it's beautiful. They each have a different perspective, but each one talks about what a wonderful childhood they had growing up in rural Boston, how blessed they were, how lucky they were, how idyllic their childhood was. So, you said Janet farmed with horses. The book takes you through in the early 60s when the interstate comes through Boston, and really that's sort of the downsizing of the family farm. So tell us how then you came to publish it, and then you decided everyone needs to read this, right?
No, when I was writing it, I was writing it for the grandkids and the great-grandkids and the brothers and sisters, whatever. And so I just want to make sure that they all had their own copy. That's as far as and then I thought this wonderful history room, maybe they would like a copy of the book. My real regret is that I'm not a good writer. I just write from the heart or what my experiences were. And, I wish I could be a better writer, but this is just our story.
Okay, does anyone have anything else they want to say? Norma, you have notes.
I'm just very happy that Ann Marie took this on, and the girls are the one that does this genealogy, as you call it, or this story. And I'm just so happy that they did it, because they are more talented than I ever was. But it took a long time, so I appreciate my sister doing this for us.
And Janet is a journalist. She writes everything. She has journals that go down every year, so she's a source of information too. But each of us, when Janet was little, they were using horses and just coming in the tractors. Then when Norma was 4 years later, you move, each one of us has different types of recollections depending on what stage. Virginia, we were almost done farming when Virginia was little.
How many years between Virginia and
About 15.
Yeah, it was 4 years between most of us, but I think it was more, yeah.
For those in the community that knew Dad and knew his personality, it would be hard for them to believe that he had some really difficult years when the supervisor from the orphanage came and told him that he was a foster child. And that just really unnerved him. And Ann Marie mentioned the letters between the orphanage and Mrs. Ramonell. And at one point, she said he's spending all of his time in the pool hall. And so the book kind of details through those letters that the household was experiencing some real troubles. And then to have him come out of it and find mother. And his personality was always very happy, kind, and generous.
your family's history. So thank you, ladies.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, this book, Owen, Baby Boy Unknown, is available to check out at the Hatch Public Library. If anyone, maybe someone knew your father personally or your mother personally, are there additional copies or not?
Not really.
Not really. Okay, good answer. You just have to come to the library.
We can get the library.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks, ladies. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Bridget.